All right, good afternoon for the last session before refreshments and snacks. Appreciate you all being here today. So this is case studies for regional approaches in the Stony Brook Watershed. If you want to be in a different session, you're in the wrong room. All right. Thank you to our sponsors and to our partnership with DEP. Wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to put this conference on. I'll thank all of our speakers today. Again, without them, we wouldn't be here today. Housekeeping. If you are on Zoom and you're having trouble hearing us, please make sure your stream is enabled in Zoom. There's a little graphic there, and make sure your sound is up. In person, please silence your electronics. We will have Q&A at the end. We'll ask for you to speak loudly and clearly. Virtual world Q&A is through the Q&A button on Zoom. And if you have problems, please reach out to conference@thewatershed.org. Again, Q&A. This session has been approved for CLE credits, PE credits, and we are waiting for the certified floodplain managers credits. You must sign in. There's a sign in the back. Please sign out, and there are forms to fill out for attorneys and engineers. All right, speakers. I will be presenting. My name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the policy director for the Watershed Institute, and I'm an attorney, good or bad. We have Brian Friedlich, who is an engineer, managing engineer for One Water Consulting, who's been working with us on the Stony Brook Watershed, as well as hopefully the Lower Millstone. And then Andrew Lloyd, AICP CFM, principal planner for Mercer County, who has been extremely involved in the Stony Brook process and has been a wonderful partner through this thing. All right. Why regional watershed improvement plans? We've heard a lot today about watershed improvement plans. And, from the plenary all throughout today, this word has been around. And why should we do it as a region versus 564 different ways? So what is a watershed improvement plan? Very quickly, the new MS4 permit released in 2023, so I guess I should stop calling it new, required towns to start to figure out how to make improvements, how to address water pollution, how to reduce flooding. And they did this with watershed improvement plans. There are 3 stages. The inventory report, which most towns should be almost done, that is due at the end of this year. The watershed assessment report and the watershed improvement plan, which is what we are really going to be talking about today, that is due at the end of 2026 and 2027. So even though that seems like a far time away, it's time to start thinking about those now, because January 1st of 2026 is going to be here before you know it. The 9th annual conference will be here before you know it. Because of budgets, because of municipal planning and county planning, you got to put those things in your budgets now. And the objective of these plans is to improve water quality, address total maximum daily loads, reduce flooding, which is what most towns care about. The water quality things are the legal hook, the why you have to do them. These are required. The flooding is what towns are really trying to concern themselves with. And I have nice colors. Why do we want to improve water quality and reduce flooding? This is Trenton after Ida. So, towns were on various levels excited, probably not, about the watershed improvement plans, or really, really annoyed. Why are you making us do this? We don't want to do this. We don't need to do this. It's required. It's not required by the state of New Jersey necessarily. It is, but it's required by the Clean Water Act. In 1972, when we passed the Clean Water Act in the federal government, we said, we're going to stop discharging pollution into our waters by 1985. We kind of missed that date. We said we're going to restore our waters by 1983. We kind of missed that date as well. That was the Federal Clean Water Act. New Jersey has the Water Pollution Control Act. Same sort of goals, same sort of objectives. And so for 52 years, 53 years now, we've sort of been muddling by, as you heard this morning. We are sort of making things worse a little bit by little bit. We're not actually doing the restoration work. Water quality standards. Designated uses shall, as soon as technically and economically feasible, be attained. So here's the legal why. Not that it's good public policy, not that we're protecting our residents from flooding. Last August, I was on my way home after about 7 inches of rain dumped in an hour. It's a 12-minute commute. It took me an hour and 15 because of flooding. Water quality. This is the integrated water quality report that New Jersey puts out every 2 years. The health of our waterways. Our waterways are not healthy enough for aquatic life. They do not meet the designated use for aquatic life. Doesn't meet the designated uses for recreation or water supply. That's what we're trying to fix. And then total maximum daily loads, which is basically pollution budget. We have too much pollution. How do we restore? How do we reduce that pollution? And so this whole framework today is about the Stony Brook watershed. Kind of hard to see, but in red is the Stony Brook TMDL. That one, Jim Cosgrove, I think when he was in Kleinfelder, worked with DEP to develop. And that says from stormwater in early 2000s, we had to reduce total suspended solids by 84%. So 20 years ago, we said 84% reduction in existing loading. And this came as a surprise to many people. It's not really. And so people look at stormwater as non-point source pollution, so it's not required by the Clean Water Act. It is. That MS4 permit is what we call a NPDES permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, or New Jersey NPDES. And because it's a NPDES permit, you have to meet those TMDLs. Municipal stormwater has to meet those TMDLs. We can't ignore them. And this MS4 permit requires that now. The inventory report, again, your towns are supposed to be almost finished with these, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. In progress. And the next stage, the assessment report. How are we going to develop projects that improve water quality, meet that 84% reduction in TMDL loadings? Where are we going to get the funding? What does the public think? And when are we going to do these things? So that's what next year all the municipalities need to develop. 564 of them. If everyone here doesn't take this out and talk to your municipalities and your neighbors, that's going to be a problem. And the improvement, the next stage, basically, I look at it as the final report. It's not quite right, but again, what are you doing? Where are you getting the money? What does public think about it? And when are you going to do it? So I just want to point this out because I don't ever really focus this a lot. So the municipalities have this MS4 permit. The counties, the public complexes also has the permit. And while it is 1 year newer, it's on the same time frame in essence. So your counties that have these public complexes, and there's a definition, so not every county has all of these, but has to do this as well. So they have to come up with these plans. So counties can be a really good partner in this. And just municipalities, county, municipality, county, sort of the same time frame. So why does it make sense? This is the Stony Brook watershed. 6 towns, 2 counties. The headwaters are in the Amwells, all the way down to Princeton. West Windsor is shown in here, but they're kind of disconnected from the Stony Brook because about 100 years ago, the DNR canal intercepted Duck Pond Run, and now that dumps into Duck Pond Run. These 4 towns of the 6, we have the Watershed Institute, Mercer County, and One Water have been meeting with for many years, talking about this regional approach. And these 4 towns have agreed to do it. And sort of why does it make sense? So that's that TMDL again, 84% reduction. 6 towns, 2 counties. And if Hopewell Township, when they come up with a plan and they figure out what's coming out from outside their jurisdiction, what they are contributing to, if Hopewell Township thinks Pennington is 15% of the problem and the Amwells are 20% of the problem, and Hopewell Township is only 10, but the other towns have different numbers, how good is that plan? If you have a group project and 4 of you are all doing different components and not talking to each other, what do you think your grade is going to be at the end of the semester? Probably not good. So if you're not working from the same numbers, and then, add the public complexes, is there a public library that meets the definition? Is there a correctional facility? Is there a courthouse? Are those entities there that meet the public complex? So the county roads, on the Stony Brook, you have Route 31, which is state road, and you have 206, which is a state road. You also have county roads. Those are outside the jurisdiction of the municipalities. If everyone's not sort of talking to each other and working off the same set of numbers, you have a plan that ultimately at the end of the day is not going to do what we hope to do. And then I get asked this a lot as we are meeting with towns. So as I mentioned, we're doing the Stony Brook, we're doing an Assunpink, and we're doing a Lower Millstone. Well, can you do it regionally? So I want to thank Gabe Mann from DEP because he sent this to me because I didn't know this. In the MS4 permit, when they did the response to comments document, they wrote specifically, it at least requires you to interact with your neighbors, but there are ideal opportunities for more regional efforts to be developed in multi-municipality collaborations. The department prefers and encourages the WIPs to be developed in a regional basis. Can't require it, but does prefer it. And Brian will talk more about this, but you can also do a regional approaches for solutions. You can find solutions that are more regional versus each town coming up with their own. So that is a lot in a very quick period of time. I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He's working on the remote. We've talked with the Amwells. From an impervious cover perspective, they're very, very small portion of the watershed. At one time, at least one of them, I forget which one, was challenging their obligations under the permit. So they haven't agreed to participate at this point.
Going to go clickerless. No clicker.
Uh-oh, did you break it?
Might have broken the clicker. I don't need it.
Yeah.
You want to take it? No. All right. I'm Brian Friedlich. I am with One Water Consulting. I am a managing engineer there. I'll be talking about watershed planning for MS4 permits. So Mike alluded to this, but the new Tier A MS4 permits are not so new anymore. They became effective at the beginning of 2023. There are updates to those permits that every municipality in New Jersey has that are not combined sewer. All municipalities that have separate stormwater sewers. I guess you fixed it. It started moving on me. And the updates are driven by projections of increasing intensity and frequency of storm events. And there's a shift in those permits towards a watershed level planning and inclusion of the watershed improvement plan requirement. And the permits have to address improvements to waterways that have water quality impairments or TMDLs. Is everyone clear on the, like, who's heard of MS4 permits before? Most of you, okay. So, while it's a little crazy, every municipality has this requirement to create a watershed improvement plan, but just for their one little municipality, right? So it's not a watershed, it's not a plan for the entire watershed. It's every municipality has to create that watershed improvement plan. We'll talk a little bit about the requirements. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the regional approaches and the benefits of looking at it from a watershed-based scale and how that can kind of feed into these requirements that are more regulatory for the MS4 permit. So the Tier A MS4 permits now have a requirement to develop that watershed improvement plan. That's kind of the main topic here. But there's three main components here. It's to improve water quality by reducing pollutants that have percent reductions, like how Mike showed before, the 84% listed for stormwater in a TMDL. And I'll discuss a little more about TMDLs. The second is to improve water quality for receiving waters that have impairments per NJDEP's integrated report. So these are these impaired waters. So you might be thinking, oh, that's not too bad, just those two categories, but that's almost all of New Jersey, right? I mean, if you're in New Jersey, there's a good chance that you have either impaired waterways or TMDLs in your municipality. The third, which was kind of thrown in there, is to reduce and or eliminate stormwater flooding in the municipality. And, there's not a lot of, hard numbers that you have to meet or anything like that. But to me, this is a major component of what municipalities should be looking at. And it's a major component of what residents and community members care about. So it would be silly just to make it an afterthought. It should be definitely a part of the plans and something that should be looked at really carefully. A lot of municipalities already have, maps showing where they have flooding occurring every time it rains a half an inch or an inch. So they already know kind of where the problem areas are, but no one's really ever thought about what can we do to fix that? Where are those catchments? What's coming from there? Can we divert some water? There's a lot of work that can be done on the watershed scale around flooding too. So what else has changed with the MS4 permits? There's tier reassignments. So the tier B communities are now tier A communities. So all New Jersey municipalities that have an MS4 permit are tier A. There's a requiring to map all MS4 infrastructure, not just the outfall. So the previous version of the permit just had the requirement for outfall. So now it's all catch basins, all stormwater BMPs, basins, all MS4 related infrastructure. The requirement for the watershed improvement plans that we talked about. There's some new ordinances for tree removal, private salt storage. A lot of this, there's already draft model ordinances that are available. So especially if you're a municipality, I'm sure you already know about that. Updates to street sweeping, de-icing, roadside vegetation, waste management, and DPW material storage. A lot of that goes into the SPPPs. You guys are familiar with that. But every municipality has a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So there's kind of updates to what municipalities have to do to meet those requirements in the SPPPs. Modified cleaning and maintenance requirements for stormwater infrastructure, and then also updated training requirements. I will say that there was funding that was available for municipalities. So at this point, I'll let any municipalities that there was funding available to help move a lot of this along. And a lot of municipalities have taken that funding from DEP through a grant and are using it towards making these types of updates, also mapping their watershed infrastructure in the municipalities. So that was really a great source of funding. So looking at these water quality impairments versus TMDL. So water quality impairments, this is impaired waterways per the Integrated Water Quality Assessment Report. The list is called the 303D list. That's the list of all the impaired waters. And there's lots of different reasons that a waterway could be impaired for its intended uses. But this is just a list of some of the reasons, from pathogens, nutrients, TSS, temperature. There's lots of reasons that a water body could be impaired based on the monitoring data. And these photos kind of just show the range of different kind of impairments that you can find throughout New Jersey, from very erodible soils here. This is probably Monmouth County, I think, some glauconitic soils that erode very easily. Bottom right is harmful algal bloom. That is probably the millstone, I'm guessing. I'm guessing that's the millstone. And then there's other reasons, right? There's agricultural sources. That's not part of MS4, but that agriculture is a big part of why some streams are impaired. And then, toxic pollutants. Certainly, there's areas of New Jersey that are suffering from that too. Okay, so an impaired water body could have a TMDL. It doesn't necessarily have to have a TMDL. So you have some impaired water bodies that don't, some that do. And so TMDL is a type of study that New Jersey has issued, which stands for a total maximum daily load. And it's based on monitoring data, water quality modeling, that really is looking at a pollution diet for a water body. So it's taking a look at what's the maximum amount of a pollutant that a water body can receive and still meet the surface water quality standards. And it breaks it down. That's nice. It breaks it down into point sources and non-point source pollution. So you get different, amounts of pollution that can come from point sources and non-point sources, and what the reductions you need from those different sources. And as Mike said, everyone's like, oh, stormwater runoff, that's non-point source pollution. No, it's not. So if it goes through an MS4 system, it becomes a point source. There's a point discharge of that storm system, that pipe, and it's a point source. So when you're looking up those TMDLs, don't go to the non-point source part for MS4s. It's in the point source category. Non-point source would be something like an agricultural field that's just running off into the stream. So that would be an example of a non-point source pollution. For TMDLs, NJDEP has a TMDL lookup tool. This is fantastic. I click on the link here, but I don't know what's going to happen. It could all blow up with the clicker debacle. Who knows?
Don't click.
Yeah. But trust me, it's very easy to use. You just go online, you put in your municipality, county, municipality, and it spits out all of the different TMDLs that are located in your municipality, what stream they're on, what the water quality parameter is. Even better, there's now a watershed evaluation tool, which is on NJDEP's website. And this is really cool. There's 3 different tabs. There's TMDLs and impairments on the left there, top left, MS4 infrastructure, and then impervious surfaces as well on the right side there. So you can click through this tool. It's kind of, if anyone knows GeoWeb, it's a similar type of online tool. And you can click on these tabs, and you can click somewhere in your municipality, and it'll tell you exactly what TMDLs are there for that exact point in the municipality. And you can also pull up all of the different outfalls that have been mapped in that area. So, I went into Pennington, New Jersey, and all of the outfalls are right there on the map. All the different types, you could see where they are. So when doing watershed planning, it's a great tool. So Mike alluded to the different phases of the watershed improvement plan. The first is the watershed inventory report, which is due at the end of this year. There's the watershed assessment report due at the end of 2026, and then a final watershed improvement report, plan report due at the end of 2027. So the watershed inventory report is really where we're looking at the municipality and we're gathering all the data. There's no real analysis or assessments that's being done. We're collecting data. We're looking at what TMDLs or impaired water bodies are in your municipality. We have those great tools for that. We're mapping all of that stormwater infrastructure. And that's both infrastructure that might be owned by the municipality, and that might be infrastructure that's privately owned that's in the municipality. We're mapping drainage areas to all of the outfalls. That's actually not so easy. I'll show a figure here in a minute. You think, oh, there's tools for that. You can just click on a point and get a watershed. It's not that easy. There's mapping interconnections. So that's places where there's maybe another municipality comes into your municipality system or vice versa. And you also have to map the drainage areas to those points too, to the interconnections. Also mapping overburdened communities and impervious areas. To me, that overburdened communities, we're going to talk about the regional approach, but that's a big topic for, how can you do this on a municipal by municipal basis? You might have Princeton next to Trenton, and how do you do that without talking to each other and planning together? It's impossible. Then the next phase is the watershed assessment report. And this is where we start thinking where are we going to build projects? What type of projects are we going to incorporate? What's the best sub-watersheds to do improvements for phosphorus? What did the TMDL say about the different types of sub-watersheds? There's also a part of this is feedback from public information sessions. So there's a public outreach component that's required through the MS4 permits, looking at what funding opportunities there might be, and estimating the implementation schedule. And then that will get finalized in that final year at the end of 2027 into a final watershed improvement plan. Again, this is for every municipality, right? Every municipality is going to come up with this. So finalizing that plan of projects and load reductions, summarizing the public comment, looking at regulatory requirements for the different types of projects, an implementation schedule, what funding there's available, how we're going to prioritize overburdened communities. So there's a lot to do there. And I did mention the mapping before. So this is an example of a outfall watershed map that we did for, this is only one small part of the map book, but this is an example of all the watersheds mapped for the outfalls of the community. This happens to be for Montgomery Township in Somerset County. They have a lot of outfalls. They have like 150 outfalls. And so we came up with an automated way to do this, where we take LiDAR topography data and create a surface, which is kind of standard to do. But then we went a step further and we burned in the pipes networks into the surface, which kind of creates a spot for the water to go. And it was kind of a trial and error procedure to figure out, you know, how many people have GIS experience here? Anybody? Oh, a lot. Good. So you can fill sinks, you cannot fill sinks, you could connect the points. There's like 100 different ways that you could try to do it. And so we kind of figured out what the most optimum way was to do it. And even doing that, you're not going to get 100%. So we got it good enough where we had a process down where we could get it to like well over 90%. We're very good. And then we just have to go and like spot check to make sure that all the watersheds made sense. So other mapping requirements. So the outfalls, TMDLs, and impaired water bodies, all those interconnections, pervious areas, all of that has to be summarized into that watershed inventory report. And so this is an example of just like a table of contents. NJDEP does have now a template out there. I think it's still draft. There is a template out there that you could take a look at, and makes it easy to kind of put everything together. And this is just a way to summarize all that data. It goes in with all the electronic data that you put together using GIS or whatever tools you're using. So just some useful links. We did work with New Jersey Future to put together a primer for the MS4 permit. So if you're looking for an easy to read summary of the MS4 permit, with some more pretty pictures and things like that, take a look at that. Link to the final MS4 permit and deliverables timelines. That's very important. Some EPA references here for watershed planning. And New Jersey Future has a green infrastructure municipal toolkit when you start looking at projects. So benefits of the regional watershed-based approach. So this is a little bit different. Not everybody is thinking about this, but the Watershed Institute is. You know, they care about their watershed deeply, is what it comes down to, and they want the best planning to happen for the watersheds. And that's not going to happen if people aren't working together and planning regionally. And so what are some of the benefits? Obviously, water does not move according to municipal boundaries. We heard that a lot throughout the whole day. It makes the most sense to plan on a hydrologically defined area, so that watershed. You can build partnerships and stakeholders. You know, we haven't really even started, but we've built a lot of partnerships along the way. Everybody's in the same room talking. We've had many meetings talking about it. So even that process is really beneficial. And it's more efficient to do a lot of this planning, especially the assessment work, on a watershed basis. Instead of everyone doing it independently, you end up with better solutions, right? Because you understand the whole watershed. Lower costs, kind of the efficiency of scale. and reduce time demand at the municipal level. So every municipality doesn't have to repeat the same work over and over again. Also more effectively addresses environmental justice issues, what I mentioned before, and easier to coordinate watershed management activities and sharing of information. So at some point, the data collected from the different municipalities have to be able to talk to each other, right? We need to be able to understand where your pipes are, where are my pipes, how do they impact each other, how does that impact the water quality of the streams? There's lots of municipalities where you might have a road that goes right down between two different municipalities, and the drainage systems are on both, right? And they cross over, maybe one falls one way, one goes the other way. So that kind of interconnection basis, it's really important that we're looking at things regionally. We put together this kind of just general scope items here for what we were thinking of we're calling a watershed management plan, for lack of a better word. That's probably more confusing because it sounds like the rest of them, but I think we should rename the watershed improvement plan and keep that. Right. So what I'm calling the watershed management plan would be the regional technical evaluation of the watershed that would then feed into the regulatory watershed improvement plans. Am I making sense? Okay. So this watershed management plan would look at the TMDLs for the watershed, right? It would extract information. We would evaluate what the sub-watersheds are and how that impacts the municipalities that are in that watershed. We would develop a BMP alternatives matrix for that watershed, and that might be different depending on what parameter you're trying to treat for. It might also depend on what the soils types are. Maybe you want to focus on infiltration systems, but another area of the state you might not want to. And it would look at how cost effective they are. What's the low-hanging fruit? We have a task in there for completing a sub-watershed assessment, and this is more of a GIS evaluation, coming up with pollutant loads. That's not in here, but we did talk about doing more monitoring. That's like, we're not sure, right?
I have a slide about that.
Oh, good. Okay. Doing additional monitoring because the TMDLs are very old now. So it makes sense to do some additional follow-up monitoring to see where we're at now. Identifying improvement projects in each one of the municipalities, and then preparing that watershed management report. In my view, the watershed improvement plans could simply talk about that watershed management report and refer to a lot of the stuff that's in there as part of the individual municipalities' watershed improvement plans. So this kind of gives you kind of the framework that I was thinking. This is not from DP. This is just from me. Hasn't been approved by Gabe. But just a proposal of how this could work. I think it follows what his guidance was on your previous slide. So that watershed management plan, which is the technical piece, would then feed into the regulatory pieces for the municipalities that are within that watershed. So some opportunities for collaboration at each one of the phases. I think we're kind of past the boat on the inventory report for a lot of the municipalities. Some have completed it already. But that outflow drainage area mapping, for example, we could have done that for a much larger area, right? And then just Montgomery Township, and it would have cost less than doing each municipality figuring it out on their own. I'm not sure about this, but in one of the DEP presentations earlier, they alluded to something coming on that. I don't know if that was something around watershed mapping, but I'm curious about that. Watershed assessment report, the public information sessions, just the sheer cost of having people go to these information sessions, right? If every municipality in a watershed is doing their own session, right, you could just have one regional based session that would include a whole bunch of municipalities. That would be certainly a way to get some efficiency there. Assessment and analysis of improvement projects can be done on a watershed scale, and then identification of funding sources and implementation. I think the collaboration is going to be a plus for getting funding in the future. So having that collaboration, that planning work up front is going to be a plus for funding sources. And then preparing the final improvement plan. So Stony Brook watershed example. Mike showed a figure before. This is another one showing the different municipalities in the Stony Brook watershed, Stony Brook Millstone watershed that drains to the Raritan River. I'm sorry, this is just the Stony Brook, not the Stony Brook Millstone watershed. Just the Stony Brook watershed. 50 square miles, includes 6 municipalities. There's some Category 1 waters from Old Mill Road in to Quaker Road in Hopewell Township, as well as segments in Amwell Lake watershed wildlife management area. It's kind of a quick overview. And this is how it, I should mention Carnegie Lake here. That's a really important part of this. So it all feeds into Carnegie Lake. Carnegie Lake has had issues with nutrients, with harmful algal blooms. And so that's a key kind of component to why it makes sense to look at this on a regional basis. And how do we manage that moving forward? This is where it's located in the overall, it's the light blue on the bottom left, in the overall Raritan River TMDL. So the Raritan River Basin TMDL is the major TMDL in this area for phosphorus and TSS. And this is where it sits on the Carnegie Lake watershed, with the Carnegie Lake kind of right down the middle. And the Stony Brook is on the left-hand side there. And talked about the 84%, but the percent phosphorus reduction of 84% required for the point sources, which would include the MS4s. And what are some of our goals that we want to work with? Improving water quality, reducing flooding, minimizing, eliminating harmful algal blooms in Carnegie Lake. Enhanced focus on stormwater discharges and non-point sources of pollution. Complete regional study to maximize results and minimize costs. So that's kind of working together. And assist municipalities in complying with the MS4 permit. So a lot of this information that we gather and we analyze and we look at different projects can all be used towards the watershed improvement plan, as well as providing points for public education and outreach. 2 minutes. Yeah. So I want to talk about looking forward into the assessment and what can we actually do here? What are the types of improvement projects that we're going to be looking at? We have to get further into it to really understand the data. But, from my view, we'll be looking at disconnecting impervious cover. We'll be looking at different types of green infrastructure. There will be a big focus on stormwater retrofits. A lot of this is what is the low-hanging fruit, right? How can we spend a little bit of money to get a big benefit? And those are the things that we want to do first. That's what we want to prioritize. Stream and lake restoration, Carnegie Lake, obviously. There is, people don't think of stream and lake restoration necessarily as a stormwater BMP, but a lot of the sources of pollution that's being carried down could be from erosion of the streams themselves, right? So these streams weren't designed to carry so much flow. They're eroding, they're carrying sediment downstream, ending up in Carnegie Lake, right? Pollutants that are in the sediment in the streams being conveyed downstream. So how can we do some restoration as well in those conveyances? So disconnection, that's one of those really low, I'll kind of go through some of these really low hanging fruit here. Disconnecting can be as simple as taking a pipe that goes right out to a street and disconnecting it into a grassed area. Can have a huge benefit on a residential scale, right? There are lots of towns where all of the downspouts tie right into the sewers. So there's lots of easy ways that we can go about trying to disconnect impervious surfaces that allows it to go to vegetated areas, infiltrate into the soils. Directing runoff from impervious areas to vegetated filter strips, kind of similar idea. Could go into a rain garden. This is just a schematic of a rain garden, some different projects that I've been involved with. Rain gardens are just depressions, small depressions that can have a type of soil that gets put in that can soak up water and allow it to infiltrate into the ground. It's mostly a sandy type soil, has some organics in it that supports vegetation. So there's just some photographs here of that. Pervious paving can be a great option. We're working on a pervious paving demonstration project for the Watershed Institute for to serve as different types of pervious paving, how they work compared to each other, how do they hold up. There's going to be a monitoring component to that as well. These are just some projects also. Porous asphalt on the top left. That's a picture I took. That's a project that I worked on where it was a huge storm and water was pouring off the standard asphalt, which is in the drive lane, into those parking stalls, and there was no runoff coming off of those parking stalls. So definitely works, does require maintenance. Example of pavers. that have, coarser aggregate between them, so that allows water to move through. And this is a project I worked on for a pump station that had turf pavers. Doesn't get driven on very often, so it's a good option for them because the grass will actually grow. A lot of times these get used for a parking lot and the grass just dies off. But for this, it only gets driven on a couple of times, a month maybe, to go clean out the wet well at the pump station. Skip over the details, running out of time. Retrofitting detention basins. This is another one that's relatively low cost. All of the water is already going to a detention basin, to a centralized spot. How do we improve how that detention basin functions to infiltrate more runoff? Take out that concrete low flow channel that's sending the water right downstream. Put in stone, allow it to infiltrate. You can even design like rain garden pockets within them. Add native vegetation. A lot of options to do on the retrofitting detention basins that would have big benefits for this. And then low impact development and sustainable streets. I bring this up for MS4s because municipalities are always redoing their streets, right? There's lots of opportunities every time that happens to incorporate green infrastructure into the street design. And that will go then towards your watershed improvement plans. So incorporating, bioswales, planters, bump outs that you can send stormwater runoff into and let it infiltrate, instead of just having catch basins that go right into the pipe, right to the stream. So planning work and next steps. We've been working with municipalities. They're signing on. The Watershed Institute has been leading these efforts. So without them, I don't think this would have happened. They basically developed the stakeholder group for the regional watershed assessments. We've already planned and scoped how this watershed management plan would happen for them. Then the next steps would be to start reviewing data, TMDLs, and watershed information, doing supplemental monitoring work to fill data gaps that we have, and then start developing that watershed management plan, which would feed into the municipal watershed improvement plans. That's all I got.
All right.
Okay, it's Friday afternoon. Been sitting all day. I'm gonna give everybody 30 seconds if you want to stand up and stretch. Join me. Get our brains revigorized until we. Yeah, it feels good, right? I only have a few slides when we get to the Q&A part. Okay, because you got a lot of good brains in the room. And I used to be a teacher, and I'm telling you that this is not a sage on the stage downloading information to you guys. We're all on the same team and we're all trying to figure this out. So let's get to the part where you guys can talk too. And I just want to share it's almost like personal at this point, but how counties, I work for Mercer County Planning Department, how counties can help this whole process, but it's also kind of a personal thing to me. So I would encourage all of you to think about where you are in your personal, professional lives, and how can you, be part of this team? Because it's nothing, we all know why we should do it. Even the how isn't that complicated. It's like, well, the actual basins and everything, like we know how to do all that. And we've known since the 60s, like the bioregional approach is the way to go for, environmental management. And we're at a really crucial point where we can actually make this happen now. Like the DEP finally has gotten the word, and like the ability to enable this regional approach. So, we'll get there, but the sooner we get there, the better, right? So, let's see. That's a little quick. Okay, it's out of order. That's all right. Okay.
I didn't do that.
It's okay. I'll find it. I only have a few. All right. So as far as what counties actually have a role in stormwater management, it's kind of limited. We do site plan review if it's a big enough project. But for example, we're not triggered by the major development definition is not what triggers county review. It's even less than that. So if it's not on a county road and it's less than an acre of impervious, for example, we don't even get to review it. So that's one thing we can do is review plans that are of a certain size and related to county drainage. We also review and approve municipal stormwater control ordinances and stormwater management plans, but that's also a little bit limited because we're basically just are able to um, make sure that they conform to the state minimum standards. So now I'll get to the Watershed Institute. I mean, before we even knew about these plans coming through DEP, I've been working with Mike and Steve and Nick. We all were trying to figure out, how to do these regional approaches. So it's so exciting now that it has a name and like a focus behind it. But the enhanced ordinances that the Watershed Institute puts out, those are kind of things that we can try to encourage municipalities to look into and to try to adopt, including minor development. And so there are certain ways we can encourage and push things along a little bit, but the actual day-to-day statutory stuff that I can do, like that's my job at Mercer County as a stormwater review, it's not as much as you might think. You might think of it like some kind of one of those spy movies where there's like the headquarters and all the screens, and there's really only 6 of us in the county planning department, and I'm the only one who does water related things. So it's going to take all of us to get this done. That's the main thing that's coming out of this experience is, well, let me go back to, all right. So once this whole thing for me personally started with looking at something with the Watershed Institute for Pennington Borough, a Department of Public Works bridge that is basically getting inundated right here, and trying to figure out how to approach this topic because it involves, I'll get to another slide, but it involves 2 towns, the state, the county, the school district, lots of private shopping centers, and trying to figure out what water actually arrives at that bridge and why is it getting inundated. So the first phase everyone keeps talking about is this inventory. For me, that's like we got to get this part right, because this is how we're going to delineate all those drainage areas for the outfalls and for the interconnections. We got to know how things connect. And I mentioned 2 towns, a state road. So here's Route 31. That's a state highway, right? These are municipal roads. The school district is over there. And, each of those entities only map out the things that they're responsible for. So to get a really holistic view of where the water is flowing, you have to merge all that together somehow. And like Brian was talking about, this has been great working with One Water. We're both trying to figure this stuff out, how to burn in all these pipes and everything. And that's what these red and purple lines are here. These are pipes that go under roadways and railroad tracks. It became really clear as soon as we started trying to figure out what the drainage area was for this bridge. We thought at first it was just like this little block, which if we ran the first arc hydro tool and it looked like it was a small area, and we're like, how is that enough to inundate that bridge? But then we realized that there's these other basins across Bromwell Place that feed in there. There's this really long, like 400-foot long pipe that goes under State Route 31. And once we were able to burn those in, which is almost like taking a hot butter into knife and a hot knife into butter, and allowing the computer to know that water flows through that line. And now it started to line up. So all these little white lines are the runoff patterns and showing how they join into these drainage lines. And once we did that, we realized, I'll go back to that, but the drainage area was much larger. I can't remember how many acres, but it was like 300 acres instead of 30. It was like 10 times the size. So where are we? That's where we're looking at right there.
And Drew, how many entities, how many separate watershed responsible parties?
So 2 towns, state, county, school district, and then all the private stuff. So at least six categories, and each one of those could have multiples. So jump back to the second to that. Oops, too far. All right. So, and that doesn't even include so far any federal stuff, right? So if you're looking at the entire county or any area you're looking at, right here in Mercer, we've got 295, we've got the Turnpike. So we really need to be able to merge all this data together into like a holistic, comprehensive model. And the railroad tracks is a huge one. If anyone's trying to do this work, they just look like a wall to the GIS tools. They don't know that water can get underneath them unless you tell it. So, I'm so sorry. Close your eyes for a second. Okay. So then we got into, okay, we got to get this done. How are we going to get it done? There's these 4 towns within Mercer that are part of the watershed. So we looked at maybe the county being the lead agent in the contract. And don't worry, this is just a picture for when I used to be a teacher. It has nothing to do with municipalities at all.
You're nicer than I.
So, it made sense to do it all as one contract, we thought, instead of each town contracting with the consultant individually. But as it turned out, the county wanted there to be an RFP process or we kind of had to do that. It wasn't our desire, but there had to be an RFP process, and municipalities didn't want to wait that long because it would take a few months. But I mean, that was almost a year ago or 8 months ago.
June.
Was it
June of 2024.
Okay, so a pretty long time ago, 8 months or so. So maybe in retrospect, it would have been faster just to do it all as one, but they're each kind of trying to do their own, and they're not always sure if the other person signed up or should we wait for them, so that's a lesson learned that I think Mike will talk about in a minute. But so once that kind of fell apart, I wasn't going to just quit the process. So I'm just getting back and engaged with the process of mapping all this out, and it became super clear that the force multipliers is what we need. So we've got Watershed, we've got the consultant, we've got the county, we've got the towns, we've got Rutgers, we've got DVRPC. So we were able to get DVRPC into their we've got into the DVRPC work program to try to look at this intersection right here, which is 31 and Delaware Avenue. That's one of the main contributing factors to the initial thing we looked at, the bridge washout, but then we realized this is also a good opportunity to try to come up with some template or a method for how do you deal with something where you have a flooded intersection of a state road and a municipal road, and all these basins, these red outlines are all basins. They're all private and one school district basin. So, but they're not coming to the county for a site plan. So how are you going to influence what they do with an old basin from the 80s? It's just you can barely tell it's even a basin. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, DVRPC is going to help. They don't do a lot of the technical work, so we'll do the technical stuff, but hopefully they'll be able to help us engage the stakeholders and coordinate an effort to get everybody on board with looking at this entire blue. This is like the sub watershed that goes just to the intersection. The bigger yellow one is what feeds all the way to the bridge. But it's going to come down to money in the end, right? Funding. Like they're going to say we don't have to do this. So that's hopefully we can figure out funding sources. And I mean, it goes without saying, I guess, that we're kind of like tiptoeing around the idea of like utility. Like that's what we're trying to act like a utility without the authority or the money of a utility, but we're kind of hoping that if we keep acting like one, we'll just become one eventually and say, oh, well, we have all the tools ready to go. We know what to do. And now we have the money. So the other thing that we're looking at now is a state/federal OEM, like a emergency management grant, which would allow hopefully us to leverage the timing of the towns getting their infrastructure reports in, their mapping. If we can merge those together, fill in all the railroads and state roads and all the other things that need to be part of that into a countywide system map, then we're thinking that would be a really good contribution that we could do beyond just our statutory, site plan reviews and whatnot. But that could be used by towns for any number of purposes, including the watershed improvement plans. I think Rutgers is putting it out there. At the last session, they said they're willing to help towns do this. And so I think we're right at the cusp of cracking this, and it's going to take all of us. But we're getting closer every day. what else? Um,
Let's talk about a couple lessons learned.
yeah, great. Let me just, yeah, that was about pretty much what I had to say. So lessons learned
Yeah.
with Mike Pizarro.
Well, no, that's
Oh.
that's a panel thing.
Okay.
I didn't tell you about that. Because I was thinking about this last night. So as Drew alluded and Brian, we've been meeting with the Stony Brook towns since right after Ida because of the flooding. And what really supercharged it was these watershed improvement plans. The towns were talking about how to work together, but we weren't getting there. So we've been convening the meetings, and most of the meetings are involving the municipal professionals, usually the engineer or public works. Drew has been to, I think, every single meeting, and we've had a lot. The one person that hasn't been to a lot of those meetings were the elected officials. So all of the professionals in June of 2024 said, yep, this makes sense. The one water proposal makes sense. Let's do it. And as of today, I think we actually got some more movement to, so the professionals said, yes, this makes sense. The elected officials, we haven't got there. The other thing I have learned, and I didn't realize it at first. So the Stony Brook watershed have some big partners. And like I said, the AMWELs are like 4% of impervious cover. And the towns decided to spread the cost by impervious cover. So whatever their percentage of impervious cover were in the watershed. The AMWELs disappearing was not a big problem. Hopewell, I'm going to make up the number, but it's like 38% of the impervious cover. So if they are not there paying 38% of the cost, does this become viable? Because that's $250,000 could be a huge chunk. I don't know, Brian or Drew, do you have any other thoughts about sort of how this process could have worked a little bit better so we didn't go from yes in June of 2024 to not every town has passed the resolution to actually do this?
I mean,
Why
maybe,
don't you take a mic? Take this. Take that one.
I mean, maybe the group has some ideas too, but maybe there was a way to have like a public meetings so the towns, people could actually hear what it would cost to do it themselves versus being part of a larger one and just see the numbers. And they might have been able to influence their elected officials.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I think it comes down to money at some point. I think if there was some additional funding, maybe that would have helped it a lot, and that maybe is still something that's possible. Sounded like from this morning from DEP that there is potential future funding for this sort of thing for looking at MS4s on a regional basis.
No, that mic is hot. So if you want,
like people
And-
had their hands up, I think, too. For
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the other thing, one other thing that may be starting to move it a bit is the consultants are starting to give their costs for doing it for the town, and that tends to be really expensive. So that might be oh, this now looks like a even bigger deal. So questions. Mike, why don't you start and I'll just repeat it because I'm not running.
Is a town responsible for every discharge outlet within the town or only those that are owned by the town itself? Like I live in Plainsboro, we have, like my development has a discharge that goes under another development and goes into Cranberry Brook. I've never been sure of who owns that discharge. Is it my development? Is it the town?
So who's responsible for the discharges, the pipes, and that could be a combo. I would say, and Brian or Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say ultimately the municipality who has the permit, who's authorized these discharges, is ultimately responsible to make sure all of these things are working. The private entity, if it's a private one, may have to do the O&M, but in the end of the day, the municipality has to ensure that happens.
Yeah, I'll just add, the municipalities are responsible for the discharges from their outfalls. They are also responsible through the MS4 permit for mapping all of the infrastructure So they need to know where the pipes are and infrastructure is for outfalls that are not owned by them or infrastructure that's not owned by them. But I think you're asking more about who's responsible for the discharge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to see how it fits in with each town's plan. You know what I mean? They don't control what goes on at my development. I mean, we're residential development, so not doing anything horrible, but how do you control what's coming off your town into a water body if these are all private developments?
Yeah, it's a good question. You may have some thoughts on that, but I will just, so there's the situation where you might have a private development that has detention basins that were designed to manage stormwater runoff. You know, typically those would have been put in some sort of a maintenance agreement that they would be maintained properly. And the towns are responsible for making sure that that's happening.
But so I guess I'm asking you, Brian, is for the permit, towns would have to map out that basin and that discharge, even if it's not theirs?
Nowadays, yes.
Correct.
Okay. And
Not
but
now, but the old permit.
okay,
Yeah.
but and then would also have to do a drainage area for that outfall if it's not theirs?
If it's a totally separate outfall, no, but if there's an interconnection into their system, they're supposed to map the drainage area to the interconnection.
Okay.
Hope I'm getting this right.
Yeah, I think so. There was a comment from the virtual world. It would help for you to, I'm not sure, hopefully you is not me because, but I think it is, to prepare a sample resolution for each municipality and confirm the cost per each one. And yeah, so we're working on those sample resolutions. Actually, one of the towns have already passed that resolution, so it's just tweaking it and sending it out. Another in-person question. Kip, do you want to just, and I'll repeat it. Kip,
I wanted to bring up water quality management plans, which are different. And they are created under the Clean Water Act. And New Jersey is divided up into designated areas. Each one is responsible for its own water quality management plan. A project has to go before the designated agency and get an amendment to the plan if the project is big enough to exceed certain parameters. At that point, we have different capabilities within our designated agencies. So I'm going to pick on Middlesex County because Middlesex County the commissioners are in charge of that designated area. A lot of the other designated areas are not counties, and so it's messy that way. But the commissioners take the point of view that they don't know anything about wastewater. They don't know anything about water quality. They can't be expected to make any decisions. So what they do is they stamp it fine. The project should go forward. When the water quality management, when the Clean Water Act was created, our congresspeople, in their wisdom, decided that there should be two processes. One would be permitting through DEP, and the other would be this water quality management plan. And the idea behind that plan was that the citizens would be able to weigh in before it goes all through DEP and everything and say, this is a project that's going to create a problem for the water quality of our stream. We shouldn't go forward with it. But the commissioners don't want to listen to the people, even though that was Congress's idea. And so they just stamp these plans. And so we have all kinds of projects going around New Jersey that are going to contribute to the degradation of the water quality. And so then we've got this planning going on for the watershed, which is wonderful planning, but none of it is connecting. So what do we do about it?
I will take a quick stab because that's a concept I've been thinking about a lot. And I don't know when water quality planning became wastewater planning only, and we haven't looked at it holistically, but that's kind of how we're doing it in New Jersey. Hopefully we can sort of integrate more. And I know there is integration, but not the way I think Congress and the Clean Water Act originally envisioned it. So we got to continue to work on it.
Yeah, just in case anybody's confused. So the differentiation is that wastewater is, from sinks and toilets and whatnot, right? Versus stormwater. So the way that it works now with water quality management plans are basically all about sanitary sewer. They're not about stormwater. So
there's a package plant on the site, it becomes stormwater involved. If there's any kind of material coming out of that package plant, it goes into the local stream.
Right, yep, so then it would have to have its own permit, an Egypti's permit,
Yeah.
right. But so there should be public commentary. I mean, I know in Mercer we do have public commentary for our amendments,
All right.
but
I'm sorry. I didn't
no,
mean
it's
to
just-
cut you off.
I'm just encouraging you that there should be some public commentary period for that.
Well, in
Yeah.
the case I'm thinking about, which is in Middlesex County and Colts Neck, there was plenty of public comment.
Okay,
But the commissioner said, look, we don't know anything about this, so we just can't
Right.
stop this project.
So-
It's out of our bailiwick.
right.
And, I suggested to them that they think of themselves as a bunch of judges. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to listen to the information and make a decision. And they said, oh, that's too much for us.
Mm.
And not really realizing that it was the governor that set up the designated area, and she was required, it was our female governor, required to do so by the Clean Water Act. She didn't have any choice. So she
All
set
right.
up these agencies all around the state, and they're not being utilized properly.
All right.
That's a good
I
point.
I appreciate it. Unfortunately, we are way past time. Sorry about that. I will be around. I'm sure Brian and Drew will be around. We'll be downstairs with cookies. I have a sweet tooth. All the materials on our hub, the recordings will be available. All the information will be there. Oh, and I completely forgot the secret code for lawyers. Any lawyers in here other than me? All right. 7:8 is the secret code. If you know what that means, you can get an extra cookie. Please put down the on the form, the secret code, which I completely forgot. Engineers, everyone else, please fill out your timesheets there, put in your forms, turn them back in. And again, I want to thank everybody for spending a little over an hour and 15 with us this afternoon. I want to thank the panelists for their amazing thoughts and insights and all the work they've done on the Stony Brook watershed. Hopefully that will be a model that we can replicate throughout the state, because that is the only way we're going to solve this. So thank you very much again. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us at the 8th Annual Watershed Conference. And then again, we do have networking and a speaker for brief remarks. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right.
It's like until 4, isn't it? It's supposed to go until 4. It's only 3:50. Yeah. Hey, Mike, where? Oh, wow.
Don't even tell them.
I'm gonna tell this guy, he should be able to, we're free to go to this town.